Good morning, Robin Waite. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Gary.
Good. Well, I'm a bit of a fan of yours, Robin. I'm really honoured that you've come on. Many years ago, I read one of your first books, Take Your Shot, and I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. And just to explain, Robin is, I'm just checking my notes here to make sure I get it right. So you're the owner of Fearless Business, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and you're known to help businesses and coaches get their pricing structures correct and earn more money, which that's why I'm so excited to get you on because I'm hoping we're going to come up with some gold nuggets for my painters and decorators. But like I say, I read your book, Take Your Shot, many years ago, and I really loved it.
Amazing. Well, that was the purpose behind it, was essentially just to help as many business owners as we possibly could do with that book. So, and obviously it was a bit of a happy accident. It was a weird one. So I won't give too much of a spoiler away, just in case people do pick it up and read the book. But I don't know if it twigged that obviously Russ was one of my coaching clients, so he was based on a real character, and it's obviously told as it's written as a parable, as a story. So there were several books which inspired it, and I just find, when you have an actual real life story that you can tell, it's far easier to consume. There are so many books out there that are sort of, hundreds of pages thick and just take years to kind of chew your way through. Whereas this was like, right, quick, short read, 5 very simple business lessons in there. But let's tell that story about Russ and his journey. He's a golf pro, so his journey about productizing his services, raising his prices, and then learning how to sell them.
Yeah, it was just rung true so much, like leaving early on the morning, a winter's morning, and getting paid per session and creeping out your house, not wanting to wake up your wife and your newborn kid, and it's just related so much to struggles I've had over the years when
Yeah.
I started out decorating and just like going on holiday and suddenly you've got no money coming in and stuff. And, as being self-employed and so many people can relate to those kind of problems.
That's it. I think you've alluded to a lot of common problems. I mean, funny enough, actually, again in the book, it was whilst it was Russ's story, there was a lot of actually of my personal experience which I drew on in there as well, which you probably gathered. Sort of the more deeply emotional stuff. I was like, well, I can't pull that out of Russ necessarily. I've got to speak from sort of my personal experiences, and having run an agency. And use similar sorts of charging models to many sort of, to painters, decorators, many sorts of trades over the years. The day rate, effectively, that's how we used to charge when we started. And just ran into typical agency life with that. I ran that business for 12 years, and towards the end of it, I was just completely burnt out because, lots of late nights, too many clients trying to get jobs over the line just to make ends meet. So a lot of what I talk about now, I wish I knew 20 plus years ago when I first started that business out. But again, it's drawing on those experiences to be able to hopefully help some of your audience out today as well.
Yeah, sometimes it takes experience, which is great and the benefit of hindsight and stuff. But I think what we're really looking to do and to help people is, not to have the pain we've had.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say, having been established for a number of years, my pricing is good. And even still, I hands up, I don't feel I have an exact science to it. All I have is customers which trust me and don't want anybody else. So I'm in that fortunate position. But what I feel we need is like people starting out. Yes, you've got to become established and stuff, and get your reputation. But is there a quicker way? Do they have to wait for years? Do they have to rely on word of mouth? It'd be great from the get-go for people. Obviously, they've got to be good and they've got to be a good standard,
Yeah.
but to get some systems in place so they're earning well from the start.
You used a really interesting word there, actually, standards, and this is something which I comes into conversations quite often with clients. Standards is something which I think is very overlooked by a lot of businesses starting out because we're still trying to figure stuff out. But I always talk about like there is a minimum standard which every small business owner should do. So I'll try and rationalize it a bit. So a lot of people, when they're talking about USPs, unique selling propositions, they're always like, oh, we're gonna make sure we do a really good job to the highest quality that we can using the best materials, blah, blah. And I'm like, why would you ever wake up in the morning in your business and go, do you know what, sod that quality stuff, we're just going to do a substandard job today, we're going to use the cheapest materials, we're just going to rush in there and rush out. So there are, those aren't USPs, those are just
No.
things that we should do as a standard. But there are, I see a lot of trades. I mean, I've been through a major house renovation, which took me 4 years. So I've worked with a lot of trades over the years. I have a busy family home here, so we have a lot of people coming in and out of our house to do jobs. And as a customer, you notice things about the way that those trades behave and react. I kid you not, we were looking for an electrician when we bought this house 9 years ago, and I must have phoned up or tried to call 15 local electricians. Guess how many called me back?
I would say if you're lucky, too.
Two, yeah. Guess how many actually showed up and gave me a quote?
Well, hopefully not zero, maybe one.
One, right? And Tom is still our go-to electrician over the past
Yeah.
decade, right? And we're about to potentially undertake a big like a self-build project. We're about to sell this place now. Guess who's going to be doing the rewiring job on that? Tom. So he helped me out with wiring up this studio when I built it and various things like that. But basic standards: answer your phone, respond to customers, show up on time when you say you're going to show up. We've had plasterers come in, and again, they'll say they're going to be here at 8:30 to do a quote, and they just don't bother showing up. People even who we've booked to do jobs, and they don't turn up on site on time. Or worse still, you can see them sat out in their car on the road having a fag. So they come in smelling of smoke, and they're. I know with painting and decorating, obviously, that you're going to get your kit a bit messy, right? It's the nature of the job. But when you show up to do a quote, show up with a clean shirt, right? These are the basic minimum standards that any tradesperson should be, doing. That's where the relationship starts. That's where that reputation starts. And then, yeah, obviously you've got to show up and do a fantastic job. Again, that's assumed that you would do that because that's why you're doing this in the first place. But I think it's all the peripheral stuff right from the word go that a lot of trades unfortunately are missing. And then they're scratching their head when they're in a pub on the Friday night, or Thursday evening. They're scratching their head going, oh God, it's really hard being a painter and decorator, can't make the money, this, that and the other. And it's like, well, are you calling people back? Are you showing up when you say you're going to show up? Are you doing all of the basic stuff right? And I'm sure many listening to this will be, because they're, subscribe to your podcast for a reason, Gary, because clearly they want to learn. So all you guys have probably got, and girls have probably got the right sort of approach. But you start looking at some of your peer group and how they're behaving, and you're like, I can probably guess why you're struggling a little bit.
Do you know what, Robin? I'm kind of cringing whilst you're talking. Now, if I was to like shoe on the other foot, you're right, 100% what you say. But also what you've said, I've been guilty in the past, and it would have been at a time when I was taking on every single job, not looking at my pricing, taking every job on, and having a bit of burnout, and not really running the business. We say we run our business, we don't. The business, we kind of, we don't. We're in it. We're doing the day job. We're doing the quoting. It's a job. It's not really our own freedom, so to speak. So, hands up, I'd be guilty over the years of just being. Do you know what? I'm so burnt out. I know I'm supposed to look at that job tonight. Let me make a poor excuse, and yeah, and like you say, that's one customer gone forever.
Yeah.
Whereas some of my competitor who's on the ball, perhaps charging more, perhaps he takes a Friday off to do all his admin, to look at jobs, you know, but he charges a third more than what I do, perhaps, or double. But he's so efficient and so reliable, and he's got time to do it because he's charging his worth. And I think that's the trap a lot of us fall in, where they start out, you take any job, even a job you don't fancy, like a dodgy exterior or whatever, and then suddenly you're like, oh my God, I'm behind. I've got 5 quotes I haven't done. It's been a week now. Do I still do it? And the whole business goes to pot.
Yeah, yeah. I did some work with a company called Renault Sash here in Cotswolds. So they obviously renovate sash windows, and they've grown over the years now to be one of the leading sort of sash window renovation companies across sort of Gloucestershire and the southwest. But one of the first conversations I had with Chris, the owner of that company, because he was just totally stretched, working on site all the time. He did have a small team, so they had 2 vans, 2 guys per van, so a small team of 4 people. Sometimes they would split, sometimes they would all work on site together. Chris was like, I've got 23 inquiries that I haven't got to. And I was like, Chris, why are you not taking a day off a week just to go out and see these clients and measure up and get those quotes out? Because, they always say, don't they, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king. If you're not quoting, you're not selling. You're not getting cash in. You're not getting deposits. You're not getting those jobs booked in. And also, he had a backlog of work that went out something like 8 months into the future. 8 months worth of money sat on the table that he couldn't touch because he'd mismanaged his business. A major part of that was because he was undercharging, so they were just constantly chasing jobs. But what was interesting was the moment he took a day off a week, not just to go out and do the quoting, go out and do sort of 2 or 3 site visits, but also just to listen to an audiobook, spend some time with me, getting help from a mentor or a coach, or listening to a podcast, or just doing other stuff. All of a sudden, things started to click in his business. Again, it's not as practical as I think there's a cliched phrase, isn't there, of like, work on your business, not in your business. I think it's bullshit. I'm just going to call it, because it's not as simple as that. Because we'd all love to be spending all of our days working on the business and maybe not doing, being on site. But at the end of the day, you just need space for your brain to empty so that you can then fill it with creative ideas and start to solve meaningful problems in the business.
Yeah.
Hands up, I've managed to become the master at enjoying guilt-free time off now, because I don't tend to work Fridays as a rule now. But I do have to keep myself a little bit occupied, otherwise I will drift towards my computer and do a bit of work. But for me, it's like I'll go and book a spa at my local spa hotel. I go and book a massage, and I'll go up there for the day, just write some ideas down, just chill out, basically have a nice coffee, go for a massage, whatever. Or I'll go into town and get my hair cut, or just something that's not work. And guess what? A lot of my most creative ideas now happen on a Saturday morning, because I've given myself that space. So it's not about working on your business. It's about just giving yourself the space to be creative. But Chris, one of the things which we changed with Chris was that, so first of all, sort of taking that extra bit of time out to go and start doing the quoting and get those more jobs booked in, which sounds counterintuitive because he had that backlog. I think, again, a lot of trades will wear it as a badge of honour on their shoulder that they're so busy that they've got this massive backlog of work. It's like, well, how much money is tied up in that? Imagine if you could collect all that money up front. And so when Chris and I had that conversation, he had that realisation where he had about 180 grand's worth of work there. And I was like, well, why are you not hiring another van? At least if you could speed your productivity up by 50%, okay, it might not be as profitable, but you will collect more money each month in the short term so that we can reduce that backlog down, maybe get it down to something a bit more manageable, like 2 to 3 months. And what was interesting was he managed to get it all the way back down to pretty much 3 to 4 weeks as a backlog. Then somebody would quote for something and they could almost immediately take the deposit and start the work. Yeah. And so cash flow went crazy. So he was able to start to build up a rainy day fund. He got ahead of corporation tax and his other commitments to HMRC, so that he was building that cash up. And as soon as the corp tax bill came in, it was paid. There was money there to pay it. Now that's a 5-year journey that Chris and I have been on. It didn't all happen overnight, but it starts. And then of course what we did, because he was in so much demand, we could start to think about his pricing structure and raising the prices. So I always like to remind people as well, there's never one, I know I'm the pricing guy and that will always be my, hey, let's look at your prices first. But there's about a dozen levers which you're kind of like pushing and pulling to bend your business into shape, where you make, you get 12% more leads in here, you get 5% more conversions there, you get 18% more money in per job, you get, 5% more people come back and book another job from you. And so we're pushing and pulling all of those levers all the way through. Next thing you know, you've doubled your turnover, tripled your profit, and starting to build up that nice rainy day fund. So if your van breaks, you can buy a new van. If you want to go on a nice holiday, treat the missus to a nice holiday or whatever, you can get that booked in without really having to think about it. But again, I think a lot. I don't. Again, this is a broad generalisation. I'm making some assumptions here, Gary. So do correct me if I'm wrong. But
Oh, cool.
I see a lot of people in the trade space who are literally living hand to mouth. They get paid their cash. It's spent immediately on bills and whatever else you want to spend your money on, and then you're constantly kind of chasing. Whereas we want to get ahead of the game.
I would say you're 100% correct. I would say a very, very high percentage of hand to mouth, 100%. Um, a couple of points which are interesting. Having time out is it's only when I'm on holiday that I have new inspirations. Um, Up until recently, and then sort of running brush wizards, I still paint, but I'm more part time, so I get a bit more time out to look at stuff. So that's true. Um, your business name, Fearless. I think a lot of businesses have fear.
Mm.
One guy comes to mind. He was busy getting loads of inquiries, had a few guys working for him, but it just didn't work out. They're not the right staff, or he's gone back to working by himself now, and it's like it's a fear factor, isn't it? It's how do you correct me if I'm wrong? If you're a one man band, you're going to struggle to do anything significant, aren't you, in terms of money?
Um,
How do you get?
I would disagree. If you're thinking short
Hmm,
term, yeah, you're always going to struggle. If you're constantly kind of chasing and your back's against the wall and it's hand to mouth, yeah, you're always going to struggle. But if you're thinking longer term, it's that there's that slow compounding effect which happens, over time where pound here, save £2 there, save a tenner there, and if you invest it wisely and you're sensible, then yeah, over time, over 5 to 10 years, you can shift yourself from that sort of mindset of chasing to. But everybody's seeking instant gratification. Everybody's
yeah,
seeking a quick buck. They want it all now, or they need it all now. So in some cases, I mean, we also have to be realistic. Like since COVID, the last 6 years, the cost of everything has gone up by 50%. I think people massively underestimate that. So if you haven't put your prices up, you're actually discounting by as much as when you work it out the other way, 33%. Imagine that doing the same amount of work but making a third less money, right? So at the very least, if you've not done a reasonable price increase, even on your day rate, but we won't even get into packaging, productizing yet, but even just on your day rate that you're charging, you are already massively behind and chasing like everybody else who's kind of figured it out. So I think, let's get rid of that. Let's delay the gratification. Let's start to save in tiny increments, and it might feel totally meaningless sticking a tenner away a week. But imagine in 12 months' time, you've got a little savings pot of £500 there that if anything goes wrong, and imagine if you've invested that £500 and got 10% on it and you got 50 quid for free, right? So we start small, but we start to look at a long-term game.
yeah. There's obviously people need to earn different amounts of money depending on what their outgoings are and circumstances. But I think we all want to earn as much as possible. A few people have done videos in the trades game around if you're on, say, 200 a day, by the time you whittle it all down, holidays, sick pay, tax, running costs, like you say, everything's gone up 50%.
Mm.
You may as well just, no disrespect to working at Tesco stacking shelves, but you're pretty much on a minimum wage,
Yeah,
by the time you whittle it all down.
yeah,
And
and
yet,
we can. I think we can talk about this. It's probably a bit controversial, but why are so many people like on benefits now? It's in some, working hard doesn't often pay, and the thing is as well. I think there is again. It's a mindset which we're brought up with as youngsters, children, where if you were brought up in a household where your mum and dad worked hard, and everything was about yeah, you work hard, you'll be successful, and then you're taking that into your work. Again, there's a it just doesn't work like that. At the end of the day, the most successful, richest people should be nurses, teachers, painters, and decorators because you guys do all work bloody hard.
yeah,
Let's face it. I've done the manual labour, and I would rather be sat here in my air-conditioned studio doing this online business thing. I've done, like I said, I spent 4 years renovating my cottage with my own hands, so I know how hard the graft is. But hard work does not often equal success. We've got to start to just change the rules a little bit that you've been brought up with and see that, well, the dream business, as I see it, is not one where you've got even more clients. It's actually where you've got fewer clients but double the income. Imagine having double the income but with half the clients. So you earn as much money as you're getting now, but maybe on 2 days a week, or 3 days a week, or something like that.
So, I mean, that sounds exciting. We've discovered we've got to get the fundamentals correct. We've got to turn up on time. We've got to have a clean top on. Don't need to turn up in a suit. We're tradies.
Yeah.
Let's get the basics right. I bet everyone listening could be guilty of not getting a quote done in time, not turning up on time. So that's step one. What's the next step? If you were starting out, Robin, you've had a change of heart. You want to be a painter and decorator. You're fed up with your aircon office, and you want to get your hands dirty. What's the next step? We've got the basics now, understanding. Where do we go next?
So I think there's a certain. I mean, look, let's face it. The first thing people generally tend to do, and they go online. Well, if they're looking for a painter or decorator, they'll either ask for a referral from like in a WhatsApp group of friends. So our dad's WhatsApp group, from the local school, is that we're always like, oh, does anybody know a good plumber? Does anybody know a good painter decorator? Does anybody know? But second to that, people will still go onto Google or ChatGPT or onto Siri or something like that and say, find me a local painter and decorator in Stroud. So you still have to have, again, it's not just about presenting well when you show up on the doorstep, it's also about presenting well online. And actually, again, getting some decent headshots done so that you can get your website up to, just a simple one-page website with a nice headshot of you with your van looking really slick and professional. It doesn't have to cost a lot. A professional headshot will be a couple £100, £300 maybe, for an hour-long shoot. Maybe get them to come out and take some photos whilst you're working and stuff like that as well, so people can see your setup. But you can use that headshot across LinkedIn, your Instagram, your TikTok and things like that. So it's all consistent, looks professional. Next thing, I'd be like, right, I need to get 10 to 20 reviews on Google or Trustpilot ASAP. Again, ideally with photographs of some of the jobs which you've done so people can see the end result. So if you go and look at Renaissash's website, you'll see what I mean. Professional headshots. They've catalogued a lot of the projects which they've worked on, with photographs. They've written up blog articles explaining like, hey, this is what the client wanted. Here's a bit of background about the house. Here's some of the locations we've worked at. So they've gone to town on just presenting online really professionally, like any business would and should. Beyond that, really, then you mentioned about quoting. Again, people are, when you set foot on the doorstep and you're there looking around the house, sizing up the rooms and getting a feel for it, people want a price. I think there's a temptation for a lot of, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen a lot of trades be like, yeah, I'll come back to you with a quote, and then you never hear from them again. It's okay to give somebody a ballpark figure there and then. If you've been doing this long enough and you've got a good feel for a 5x3 room, you know how long it's going to take. You should be able to say, well, actually, I think all in with materials, I reckon, and it's a simple job. It's just, the four walls touching in around doors and windows. I reckon probably between £500 and £700. And see what the client says. If the client's eyes pop out of their head, you know that there's going to be a potential conversation to be had around, and they might go, oh gosh, that's a bit expensive, or we had Gary come round and he said it was going to be 350. Is there anything you can do on that? And that's the point when you initiate the conversation. If you leave and do a quote and email it to them or text it to them or whatever, and they come back and say, one, the client might then ghost you. Because they don't want to say no. They're like too polite. They just don't want to say, oh gosh, that's expensive. So they say nothing instead. And then you're there going, well, I've got all these quotes out there. Why is nobody getting back to me? And also, even if they come back and say, actually, I don't think it's for us, you can't get any real kind of visual cues and feedback as to why. So I always encourage the clients I work with at least to give a rough ballpark. And you can caveat it and say, look, don't quote me on that, but I think roughly it will be between X and Y. Let me go away and run up an exact figure for you so you know exactly how much you're paying, but how does that feel? And then you get that, okay, yeah, that sounds good. You're probably onto a good one with that job.
Yeah, you're not wasting your time,
Yeah.
typing a quote up for half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. And you can say that to the client at that point. If they come in and they're like, oh, we're hoping it'd be like £300, you say, oh, it's probably not the right job for me, but I know so-and-so who I can make an intro to, he's just started out. They're pretty good, but, try them out. I always like to leave clients with a good a good sort of taste in their mouth afterwards. Because if you leave and give them a referral, even if it's to a competitor, who are they probably going to remember and refer? Right? Even if some of my best clients as a business coach are clients who've never paid me a penny. But they are the ones that every time I release a book, they buy it, they leave me a review. They're at every event I run. When I speak on stage, they're there supporting me. They're my biggest advocates of the brand, despite the fact they may not have ever bought into my coaching programs. So it's always about retaining that degree of professionalism, raising those standards, and also being abundant. I think this is something I wanted to touch on as well. Everybody, there's some common misconceptions or beliefs that a lot of people have in business. So the first one, let me ask you, if I were to ask you what's the one goal in business, what would you say it is?
One goal in business
Yeah,
um, is to earn good money.
to earn good money. Yeah, more specifically, to make profit. Okay, it's the profit ultimately which you can pay yourself out of and use to grow your business. But quite often, so if I were to then say, okay, so it's to make money, how are you going to make money?
Well, old me would have said work hard, get loads of jobs, work weekends. Um, again, like you said earlier about my beliefs around growing up and seeing my father work hard and stuff. Um, yeah, it would be work hard.
Yeah. So work hard, get clients equals make money. Okay. So there's some truth in that, but let's kind of start to break it down. Work hard, we've already established if you work yourself into the ground and by 45, 50 you're burnt out, you're no good to anybody. You can't earn any more money doing that, and it's stressful and it's just not a nice place to be. Working hard isn't necessarily the solution. There'll be times short term where you've got to graft. That's a given. Jobs where you just got to get your head down and just get through the work. Fine.
Hmm.
It's like Usain Bolt running at 100-meter pace over a mile. He can't sustain that,
Mm.
right? And then also to get more clients. Well, let's look at it this way, right? So a lot of painters and decorators will be out there, they'll be earning money. We've established many of them are living hand to mouth. So strictly speaking, there is no profit in the business because you're stripping all the profit out of the business to pay yourself and live, essentially, right? So, but to get there, to get back to zero, we've done that by getting more clients, right? So if we now get more clients, all we're doing is we're compounding a pre-existing lack of profitability in the business.
Yeah.
So getting more clients doesn't equal success either. So instead, we've got to rethink this. The goal isn't to go out and win as many clients and jobs as you possibly can do. The goal is to build a profitable and sustainable business. Okay, so this will probably surprise a lot of people. Okay, when I share this, a good conversion rate from inquiry to getting a job is 1 in 3. Okay, and 1 in 3, you must be a rubbish salesperson, Rob. That's a really low conversion rate. Well, not if you're getting paid double what all of the other painters and decorators are getting paid. You can afford to only convert 1 in 3 because it gives you the time to pour into those jobs when you do win them. It means that we're turning away far more clients' jobs than we're actually taking on. Which, rather than being an order taker and just because somebody comes to us with an inquiry and a job, rather than just taking that order, we take a moment to stand back and go, can I see myself enjoying working with this client? Is it a job that I can get excited about? Can I see myself getting great results for it? And am I going to get really well paid for doing that work? Those things are far more important than just taking orders. Who wants to be an order taker? Go and work in Costa if you want to be an order taker. Like, you didn't get into this work because you wanted to be there grinding it out for 12 hours a day on minimum wage. Okay? So we've got to flip the switch and be, rather than being an order taker, you go into, when you step foot through somebody's front door to go and quote for a job, you're eyeing up, do I like that? Have I got a good feeling about this? Do I like this person? Can I see myself? Like all of those questions I just asked. So you are qualifying the prospects before you decide whether you want to take that job on or not.
I get what you're saying because obviously I've read all your stuff. So, say a typical job, a decorator goes into a living room, pricing up a living room. and say they're on 250 a day,
Mm.
and they're like, it's going to take 3 days, so 750. That's what they're going to charge.
Yeah.
There's no profit in 750. You pay your taxes. There's just no money you can put aside really. Um, stuff we've been discussing.
What's the
Now,
client paying for?
clients I know, the good clients are paying for an outcome, a quality outcome. Clients you don't necessarily want are looking at a quote and working out, well, if he says it takes X amount of days, that means he's on 200 plus a day. I don't earn that much money, at my job.
Yeah.
Um, so then you want the right clients and say to make a profit, put money aside, invest in your business, in yourself. You want to double it
Mm.
to 1500. Many decorators listening now will be like, I just can't see how I can do it.
Yeah. So again, let's we don't have to just double our prices, right? And I'm not a big fan either of just doubling your prices and not stacking any extra value. Again, we raise our prices so that we can do the best job that we possibly can do for that client. We can pour extra value into it. So if you double your price, well, you've got more time to deliver a better quality product or service, an end result to that client. You're not having to rush through the job because otherwise, to get to the next one, it's like, let's stick around and make this as good as we possibly can do. Client's going to be happier. Probably they'll invite you back to do more jobs and they'll probably refer you to more people. So you make more money on the back end of it as well in that holistic cycle. And the idea is that you raise your prices, raise your standards so you can stack more value into it. But the key thing is you don't have to jump just to double. It might be that forget about time. Let's focus on the result. If the result is to do a room to the highest possible standards until the client's happy, well, and if you've worked out the average room would be 750 previously. What you could do is you could just increment those prices. Lovely sunny Monday morning and you're feeling happy and you've got to go and do 3 quotes and you think, you got that conversation that Gary and Robin had in the back of your head and you think, fuck, 750, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, sorry, you did say that Dulux and some
We're
people...
traders.
I get you know me, Gary, when I get a bit overexcited about stuff, the odd F-bomb drops out, so apologies for that. So you think, yeah, I'm fucking up for this today. I'm really game for this. Well, and you think when you go into that room, you do the quote as everything's going well. Got the conversation that Gary and Robin had at the back of your mind. You like the look of it. You like the client. Everything's going really well. And you think, do you know what? For you, it's just 950. So you increment it, and then maybe next Monday, tickety boo, one of those 3 people that you quoted last week said, yes, you did the job, everybody's happy, it's great, just tucked away £200 into our rainy day fund, everything, I'm getting into the groove of this. Next Monday rolls around, you're doing some more quotes, you look around the house, it's nice, and you go, do you know what, for you, it's just 1150 for this job. So all we're doing is as our confidence grows, as we get better at the process and what we call articulating our values, we're able to get better at sort of the sales process and getting, talking about results and outcomes. You can gradually just increment your prices. And then after several months, you'll get to a point where you're hitting sort of £1,500 maybe for that job. And the nice thing is that when you charge per job based on the results and outcomes, does it matter if it takes a day and a half or 4.5 days until the client's happy, if what they're paying for is the outcome or result that you've both agreed?
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because I've seen it as well. Many decorators, and since I started Brush Wizards 6 years ago, they'd be like, oh, I charged £1,000 for this job. I've done it in 2 days. Do you think I should knock some money off?
No, if the client's happy, it's a fair exchange.
Exactly, I
Right? If they
agree.
said yes and they're happy and they paid the money, no,
But
tickety
that's
boo,
all
it's great.
about changing your mindset, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's-
100%.
you could get someone who's been painting 6 months and it will take them a week, whereas you've been painting 20 years and it takes you 2 days. But that's why you should be earning good money.
Yeah, why get penalised because you're experienced, you do a better job and you do it faster than somebody because you've got that experience? Absolutely.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Again, I personally don't, when I turn up, I don't, it's always about, 1200, something like that. I can see how that's really beneficial, and I feel I probably would if it was new clients now, but because mine I've known for years, they're kind of whatever I put in, they're happy with it.
Yeah.
I can see how that works and how people just wouldn't realize, like in your physiology and how you come across, once you start having that confidence, everyone loves a confident tradie, and it's like people, it rubs off on customers, but like, actually, I trust this guy. He knows what he's at. I respect him, you know. And I always use the analogy of like if you went to a dentist and they were like, oh, it's £5 for a filling. Would you go to that one or one that charges whatever they charge now, 80 quid? You go with the 80 quid, don't you?
Yeah, because to a certain degree, you do pay for what you get what
Yeah.
you pay for. It's the same with brain surgeons. Would you use the cheap one, the medium price one, or the expensive one? I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but I think I would definitely use the most expensive one because you associate expensive things with quality.
Yeah. What about a couple of questions, Robin? And I've been guilty of it, GHP decorating and, what your business name is, what you put on your van. What's your feelings about around sort of niching and specializing in certain areas? And a company name to reflect it, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the debate over personal brand versus business brand. I think if you've got aspirations to grow your business, have multiple vans and do like Renault Sash, it makes sense. It grew beyond what Chris was doing. It did start out as just being him, but when he then went through a rebranding, we use the same branding person, Sapna, who's absolutely epic. But when he went through the rebranding process, you could almost see a really this shift in his demeanor. All of a sudden, he shifted from being business doer to business owner, and he had a team, and he had these beautiful vans with an amazing logo sign written on it, and just that, and everything was just that much more professional. But there is also, and also kind of it appeals to different people. There are people who will want Renault Sash, but there will also be customers who will just want Chris to come and do their windows right, who would prefer that more personal approach and personal brand. I think it's up to the individual business owner really to decide which direction they want to take. But I think it does, if there's ambitions to kind of scale it and bring on other team members and have multiple vans out there and things like that, then yeah, get a business brand designed and get it done professionally. Don't get your sister's auntie's nephew to do it or whatever. Get a professional designer on board to do it because I
There
think
was
it does
one.
prevent better.
There was a chap that come to mind when you said about a decent headshot and photos. He passed away sadly, a guy called Keith Diamond, but he had a lovely face and it was on the back of his van. And imagine driving round, Keith Diamond, painting and decorating his lovely face. That just it stood out a mile.
100%.
So something like that would be amazing.
And as for niching, I mean, look, again, you go and speak to any half-cocked business coach, and they will talk about niching. I have a slightly different sort of approach to niching because a lot of people think about niching as target market, like our ideal client persona. Who do we want to go when we do marketing activities? Who are we targeting? I think there's more to it than that. So again, Renault Sash is a great example where they've specialised in sash window renovation. They're known for doing that one thing really, really well. And there is a specific type of client as well as a part of that. So it's a combination of the market niche as well as the product niche which you choose, and the two dovetail over the top of each other. I think a lot of marketeers and not so experienced coaches just focus on marketing niche and actually go down a bit of a rabbit hole with that if you haven't
Yeah.
got the product right. So you've got to have a combination of the two things working in tandem.
Yeah. Um, In terms of a guy I referred to earlier, obviously not mentioning names, had a team of guys, and I've been guilty of it in the past, where you look at it and you think, oh my God, profits are useless. I may as well work by myself. I think that's the only way to grow is when you're charging the money you're worth, and you're earning well. You can pay the guys that work for you well,
Yeah.
probably better than what they would do, well, not better, but near to what they would earn working for themselves, but they're getting guaranteed work and it's less hassle for them. I sometimes feel that's the only way forward, because some painters, if they want to sub or work for someone else, they might say, I want 200 a day or whatever it may be. And if you're only charging 225 or 250, by the time all the taxes come off and all the hassle and potential comebacks on jobs, it's almost not worth it. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're charging 400 a day and you're paying them 200, that's when it makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, well, for one, I think I'm going to stick with Chris as an example. So, one of the things we worked on with him was, rather than choosing contractors, subbies, basically on a day rate, he chose to employ his staff,
Yeah.
because one, it gives you more security. They can't just, well, I suppose they could technically, but because of employment rights and employers' rights, you can't just walk off site and be done with it. There's ramifications to that. Contractors, subbies can just walk off, and that's kind of it. Really, you've got no comeback. But the other reason was, again, about fixing that cost base. So he knew how much it was going to cost him each and every month, through payroll, through his salaries. And we did some very basic sort of calculations, rule of thumb. So if you've got somebody working for you under a salary, whatever you're paying them, they need to be responsible revenue-wise for bringing in 3 times their salary back. So if you're paying them 2k a month, they need to be responsible for delivering, and that's minimum wage now, by the way.
Yes.
But if you're paying 2k a month, they need to be responsible for 6k's worth of jobs, paid jobs, basically. So again, you could divide that roughly by 20 and end up at 300 to 400 pounds a day, roughly. But essentially, how it worked out, I mean, that's baseline, by the way. So how it worked out was that a third of it would go for their salary, a third of it would go to tax and a contribution towards the business's overheads, and then a third of it would go into profit, ideally.
Yes.
So that kind of gives you a rough idea. And actually, with subcontractors, yeah, doing 50, doubling it up is a rough rule of thumb for subcontractors, because obviously they're responsible for their own tax and overheads and things like that. So, paying them 2, charging out at 4 is about right for subcontractors. But Chris just found it far better for business when he hired people. Yeah, that does come with other challenges, HR problems, sick leave, paternity leave, maternity leave, all of those sorts of things, do start to come into it. But again, there's measures and ways to kind of work around that as and when they sort of crop up. But it meant that we had some really clear objectives, financial objectives for Chris's business to hit in order to be able to afford each one of those team members.
Yeah. A couple more questions. I could talk forever, and I know you've got a meeting soon, so I'm going to quickly fire them in. When you go as a customer, if I was to come to you as a painter and decorator, you want a bedroom being done, I send a quote, we've got dustless sanders, minimum dust in your house, we do XYZ prep, undercoat, top coat. Are you that bothered about that sort of information? What is the information you need? So, Donald Miller, Story Brand, it's kind of like outcomes and getting underneath of what customers are, what's really going on in their head, what's when they see someone and what they want from it. What should we be presenting to customers, which would be perhaps different to your standard kind of, here's your prep, handy coats on the wall, stuff like that?
So really, one way that you could do it would be to sort of just fire a couple of simple questions at them and say, look, what is it you're looking for? Are you looking for, hey, let's just get it done? Are you looking for an okay, good job, or are you looking for the best job? Which one of those sort of 3 outcomes are you looking for? And then you can kind of explain to them, well, just a touch up. That's straightforward enough. That's kind of like your bog standard. But if you have a look at your wall, I can see that you've got, there's some old wallpaper lining that's obviously there, which probably should come off. Maybe you want to touch up, wall could even need replastering, and you could kind of go through the whole thing. So they get at least an idea of like imagine there are 3, we don't want to present 3 options. What we're trying to establish is what outcome are they looking for. So if they want the gold standard, you say, great, that's the finish we're going for. Like you said, I don't think it matters what materials and things like that we're going to use. Or if they say we want cheap paint going on the wall, and you're like, well, actually, if you want that finish, you probably want to go for a Dulux Premium or a Farrow Ball or something like that. I don't, do people use? My wife buys a lot of Farrow and Ball. I don't know if that's like a. I don't know what painters and decorators think of that, but
Well,
she,
there's mixed reviews, but Farrow and Ball recently have brought out some really fantastic paints aimed at tradespeople.
excellent. Well, so
So
that's
yeah,
good.
you're safe now.
Even as the pricing guy, I'm always like, is it really worth it? It feels like it's like double some of the stuff you'd get down at B&Q or
Yeah, no,
Homebase or whatever.
it is quality.
Or Homebase has gone out of business; they don't exist anymore, do they?
No, that's right.
So we want to kind of just ask them about, look, what would a good finish be? What would a great finish? What would the best finish be for you? Okay, great. If we're going for the best, like, and then if they say, oh, well, what's your process? How are you going to do that? Then yeah, you can talk them through it. But I have a policy of it's the ratio, isn't it? Of like, we've got two of these and one of these. So if you find you're speaking too much, that means you're trying to sell. You're trying to coerce the client into making a decision. Whereas probably all they want is they've probably just got a few concerns or questions which they've got. So give them the space to fill any silence with asking those questions. I call it STFU. It's a very technical term. Shut the up, basically. So
Okay.
if once they've said, okay, okay, great, we want the gold standard finish. Your pitch is very simple. Great. Okay. Well, now we know we're going for the best finish. Great.
Yeah, and be fearless and
Yeah.
confident.
And then
One
they'll
last,
come back with, oh, how much do you think that's going to cost, or how long do you think it's going to take, or whatever it is. And if they ask how long it's going to take, you'd say, well, what's more important to you? Is the finish more important, or do you want it done fast?
yeah.
Because there's a
One last
compromise there.
question before you go, Robin, and this comes from reading your books and stuff and packages and stuff. So I was on a site last year. I had some plumbers on there. They were looking at memberships and bits and bobs. So they run a membership with their clients where their clients pay a monthly fee. And basically, if there are any boiler problems or whatever, they come out, or that membership pays for a boiler service once a year. But it's not one big hit. It's kind of they're on call, so to speak. And I've been racking my brains for years about painters and decorators, whether they could create a similar model, a membership type amount coming in. So when we're on holiday or Christmas time, when we're not working, we've still got some money coming in. In the short 5 minutes you've got, does anything spring to mind that we could do?
If you had 50 grand in the bank, would you be worried about that?
No.
So that immediately tells me the problem isn't regular cash flow. It's about building up a rainy day fund so you can go on holiday without worrying about work. If you have a membership, trust me, you'll still be worried about work because you can guarantee the moment you get on that flight, you'll land and there'll be 3 messages in WhatsApp asking you to come and do a couple of little touch-up jobs as a part of their membership. Where I get it, it's a nice idea. I'm not
Yes.
saying that it's a bad idea, but you've got to think about. I'm inviting everybody to kind of when you're making a business decision, it's really important to ask yourself, why am I thinking about doing this? What's my motivation for doing this? So if it's cash flow related, well, we should focus again long term, building up a rainy day fund that is an investment that's building up slowly, that gives us that security. We can take out bits and pieces of it to put into a pension so that when we retire at 58, nobody wants to work till they're 68, folks. When we retire at 58, that we've got all of that planned for and taken into consideration. And it just puts you into the right sort of mindset. Again, when you go on site, you're not going there needy and desperate to get clients because you've got 50k in the bank. You're going there because you love what you do and you want to do a great job and you want to work with the best clients.
Yeah. Suddenly everything about you and the way you come across changes when you're not desperate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And 50k is my number, by the way. For anybody, if you're listening, 5k might be your number, or 10k or 20k. You've got to decide what that number is that gives you that security and peace of mind.
Right, Robin. I'm going to let you go. I know you've got to prepare for your next meeting. I really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, we'll put your details if any painters want to work with you. Equally, any of my sponsors listening, Robin is an amazing coach, as you can tell. So we'll leave all your details and I'll hit stop, say goodbye quickly, but I really do appreciate your time, Robin.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gary.
You take care.